Okay, it is May 11th. Tomorrow is Mother's Day. Wonderful and sad day for many people. It's going to be the first time I've had my kids all around since my mother passed last August. We've all just needed some time to get settled into that. So I know a lot of you out there will be with family, and a lot of you out there will be sad that your family's not around, and I'm so sorry. And I don't even know what to tell you, because you know I fight for this every day, so I know how hard Mother's Day is. All right, so let's talk about a few things recent. As I shared with you before, the Tennessee legislature passed the law that says that if there is a CPS investigation and you change your child's school enrollment, you can go to jail. Okay? Now, if you go to another state, it is felony. This is not if you have been found a neglectful parent, not if you have been charged criminally, but if they've just opened an investigation, all right? This law is horrid, 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 so unconstitutional. It passed unanimously through both houses of Tennessee's General Assembly. Unanimously. Whew. I feel like my feet are embedded in cement. It's terrible. Why? I mean, of course, we'll have to challenge it, but you know what? Somebody asked me this morning, how do we challenge it? Somebody has to go get arrested. So somebody has to get arrested, so we have a plaintiff that we can take to court, and then we can challenge the law. That's how it works. You'd think you'd be able to challenge it in behalf of like just parents generally, or I don't know, but you know, if you have, or if anybody, I mean, this is Tennessee, so I have to have somebody within Tennessee. But if you hear of anybody in Tennessee that DCS opens an investigation and they want to take their kids out and homeschool them until it gets resolved, they need to contact us, okay? I've got another attorney already signed in to challenge this, so let's just go for it, okay? All right, I'm going to keep talking about that horrid law over and over and over again, because here's what's going to happen. If I don't talk about it, it's going to slip into the back of everybody's mind, and then it's going to start like peeking up like little gophers out of the desert and looking around for a victim. And then it's going to kind of be invisible again. And then somebody over here and 3 counties away, that it'll peek its ugly head up over here, and somebody will get arrested over there, and then it'll peek its head, you know, it starts going like this, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, it's happening all over the place. So I'm going to talk about it over and over and over and over and over, because as soon as this happens, we got to jump on it. Got to jump on it. These laws, the way some of these crazy laws get embedded in the system, is that they're not properly attacked from the very beginning. And while I'm talking about that, I'm going to mention another one, which is this interstate compact law. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So the ICPC, if you're involved in a DCS case and either the children need to go with relatives out of state, or you want to go out of state, or you move out of state, or they pick up your kids, and anyway, anywhere there's state lines involved, all the states are doing what they call an ICPC. They end up creating this report, totally hearsay. It's amazing that it's been allowed to go on this long, and I will tell you why it's gone on this long. Because when it first, just like that law I was telling you about, when it first started peeking its head up, it was fine. There were no problems. They were being accepted. And and now they use it all the time to prohibit transfer of children to relatives. They prohibit, I mean, I know one case where the people were like traveling through Tennessee, and Tennessee got custody, DCS got custody, and then the parents, before they could even get their kids back in another state, they had to go through the ICPC process, which is just ridiculous. So now they use it all the time to interfere with the reunification of children or the placement of children with relatives. These are hearsay documents. This is somebody that in another state does a home study, does a background check, et cetera, and then they write a report, and then they just say failed or passed, and they don't even give the criteria for it. Like I know in one case, they came in the house and I had the parents do a recording while this social worker was in the house. She was in the house for less than 20 minutes. She walked around, she kept saying, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And then she wrote an ICPC report that said that they had a exotic animal in the house, which was like a macaw, okay, like a bird in a cage. They had an exotic animal in the house, and they used window air conditioners. They did not have central air conditioning, and she flunked them for those things. So, hey girl, hey y'all. I see you coming on. Thank you, I love y'all. Okay, so, hang on, I gotta adjust my light here a little bit. All right, so the ICPC is something that somebody's gotta attack it. I mean, you know, one of the things I hope to do is that we can get more people educated on these topics so they know how to respond and they know what to say and they know what to do. So the Tennessee law, I'm going to make myself a little note here, that Tennessee law and then the ICPC, we've got to keep right at the top, right here, right in our third eye here, so that we can watch for it like crazy. All right, now I know a lot of you saw, oh gosh, there's a couple of stories that circulated that I'm just going to touch on because I want us to pay attention and see what's going on. One of them is the story out of Connecticut where the parents were from Tennessee and they were traveling through Connecticut, and she had some labor issues and she went to the hospital in Connecticut. They ended up, was wanting to try natural birth. They did a C-section on her child. They accused her of using drugs or accused her husband of being a terrorist. They took her child. I don't know all the details in that case yet, but I am trying to reach out and see what things can be put together on that. The other one that is really disheartening and is sad, and I know at least they have an attorney that seems to be hanging in there with them, is the case of the young couple that has the 3-year-old boy with leukemia, and they did not want to put him on chemotherapy. Now, I'm going to tell you, as a survivor of cancer, chemotherapy is a very, very bad thing. Okay, I took it. I took full doses of it. I totally saturated my body with chemotherapy, but it did some real damage to my body. It gives you really bad neuropathy. It dries your hair out, which dries your body out, which is why your hair falls off your head, because it catches you on fire from the inside out. It burns the roots of your hair, which is why you lose your hair. All your nail beds dry up, all your fingernails come off, all your toenails come off. The nerve endings in your fingers and toes begin to rot, basically, and it affects your brain. And if it does all of those things, I'm sure it also affects your major organs like your heart and your liver in particular, and probably your pancreas. So they don't want to use for him chemotherapy. Now, there's a lot of questions, and there was a case a few years ago about a young girl that was about 13 or 14 years old, and this was in the East Coast, and her mother did not want her to give her chemotherapy, and the judge ordered that the child be removed from her mother and that they force chemotherapy. I don't remember exactly what state that was in, but I know it was in the Northeast. So here we go. Here's another case of that. Parents have some rights to make medical decisions for their children, and now, chemo is not the only treatment for cancer. So, we have to really think long and hard about what do we do when we take that medical decision making away from parents and families, especially on a preliminary basis like that. So those two stories have really been kind of hot and circulating, and I'm just going to tell you, I'm just going to tell you, if those two stories are out there and we've seen them, for those two families, there's another 500, 600, 700 families probably going through something very similar. So we know it's happening all around us. I've seen so many people sharing things in Family Forward Project, sharing their stories, sharing the details of the stories. I want to thank you so much for that, because I'm telling you, I'm pulling more and more and more people into the group. We need to continue to use Family Forward Project as a repository for all news stories that relate to child abuse, social workers, foster care, problems with adoption, to show how broken the system is. All the stories that show how broken the system is, because it is broken. We also want members to feel okay sharing their story. It is a public group. All of the Family Forward projects are public groups. The Innocent Families Against Family Court Corruption is our associated private group. If you want to go in that group, I'm going to tell you, I can't stay active in that group because I just have too many other things I'm trying to manage. There are, though, probably 3,000 or 4,000 people in the group, and people do try to, some of the people there do try to respond. If you're okay telling your story publicly, and I encourage people to tell their story publicly, silence no more. Silence no more. We cannot be silent. And I'm going to talk some more about that. It helps to kind of make some notes, but it's important to tell your story. Thank you so much. Was just reading somebody's story this morning, and I can't tell you which one it was. Sometimes I think I'm going to print some of these and talk about them specifically, but I just can't do all that. But she was telling how she had passed out at home, and her husband or somebody called the medics, and they came and they gave her Narcan like 3 times, injected her with Narcan. She had not used any drugs. And then they escorted her to the hospital, and she got charged with drugs by the cops. And then they left the hospital. So, you know, those kinds of stories happen all the time, that kind of stuff. So we've got to tell our stories. We've got to talk about them. So this week, I went to Ohio left on Tuesday afternoon, which is about a 6-hour drive for me. Spent the night, got up, went to court in the 6th Circuit Court in federal court on Wednesday morning. And we were the only case on the docket. Typically, there's 3 cases on the docket. Everybody gets 15 minutes. So you drive 12 hours for 15 minutes, but that's the way it goes, because face-to-face is very important. However, we were the only case on the docket, so our arguments ended up taking almost an hour, almost 30 minutes apiece. I went first because I was the appellant, and this is a case where a child was abused in a juvenile detention center. And honestly, people didn't care. They just didn't care, and they tried to hide it. They tried to conceal it. They destroyed videotape evidence. They locked him away and put him in a cell by himself so he couldn't talk to anybody. I mean, it's the same type of psychological abuse that they do to our kids when they take them and put them in foster care, only this time they were able to do it behind bars. So you know, it's very difficult because there's a lot of federal laws, and you can't know, as even an attorney, you cannot know every single law they're going to bring up. And I thought I'd done really well and worked really hard writing my brief, but they asked me a few questions. I think I did okay. We had 3 judges. We had a chief judge, who is Judge Cole. We had Justice Stranch, who's a female, whose husband is an attorney in Nashville. And then we had a new Trump appointee who's just been on the bench like a couple months. So he's much younger. Interesting, I will tell you, is that the Chief Justice, Justice Cole, who sat in the middle, didn't ask a single question. He did not ask a single question. However, as I went back, because I like to kind of see what judges have done what things in the past, Justice Cole is the same one who wrote a very recent opinion that I posted out of Tennessee. I mean, just came out a couple months ago, in which this judge in Tennessee was giving prisoners a 30-day credit on their jail sentence if they get sterilized. Yeah, you heard it right. Did you hear that? 30-day jail credit off your sentence if you go get permanently surgically sterilized, right? So somebody finally took this through federal court. This is what I'm saying. You got to have a victim before you can take it to court. And this Justice Cole is the one who wrote the opinion and talked about how horrible and insane it was. So although he didn't ask us any questions, it's encouraging to know that he's one that has appreciated the rights of those whose rights are being obstructed. The interesting part was Justice Stranch, who's a female, who asked me a few questions, but when the county attorney stood up to start making her argument, and of course she always says, you know, the appellee, the first words out of their mouth is, we want you to affirm the district court, right? And this attorney always has everything all written up and all these very detailed notes. She didn't get 30 seconds into her argument, and Justice Stranch started shooting questions at her. Yep. I'm just sitting there going, whoa, Nellie, this is great. And so she's just like shooting questions at her. And one of the problems in this case is that in what the district court had done when they dismissed my case was they got the facts all jumbled up. And in this particular case, it's so important that you look at every fact in order. And this is why when I tell everybody, write a timeline, write a timeline, write a timeline, because the order that things happen in is critical, okay? It is critical. So if they take an ex parte order on you and remove your children, that's very important. And what happened right before that and what happens right after that is very important. So you have to sit down and lay those facts out. So in this particular case, part of our case is that this child was put in solitary confinement, and he had never been found guilty of anything. He was a pretrial detainee. He was not to be punished without a hearing, and that is a due process right. So, and then his medical, he had been in there several times, indicating that he had some mental health issues, and he, you know, they didn't report his condition to his psychiatrist. Well, what they do is they say, well, his psychiatrist said he was fine. We took him to his psychiatrist, his own personal psychiatrist. We took him all the way over there, and yet they did not report to the psychiatrist that he'd been yelling and screaming in his cell, that he'd been kicking things, that he'd been punching the wall, that he'd been standing in his head, that he had had all these very, very depressive and psychotic behaviors that he had been exhibiting. They didn't tell that to his psychiatrist. So, of course, the psychiatrist in an hour interview or 40-minute interview thinks he's fine. So I was very excited that Justice Stranch knew the facts of the case very well. The county attorney continued to try to obfuscate the facts. She tried to mix them up, and it was, it was very frustrating to me. And then she said something. At some point, I'm going to upload this. I want to really play the whole argument of the appellee and do a commentary on it, and it's going to take probably an hour to do that because what she says is about 24 minutes, and I'm going to have to stop and say things about it. However, I'm just going to tell you, because I know that I'm being stalked through Family Forward Project. I know that they're watching for everything I say. They're already trying to sanction me for standing out and talking for families. They're already saying that I should be sanctioned for accusing judges of stealing kids, okay? So what I want to say about that case, part of that I'm going to hold back until I find out exactly where we are. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but once I get that, I'm going to break it down for you piece by piece by piece. So many people through Family Forward Project have stepped up. So many have said, I've got a case against DCS. I've got a case, I want to sue them. I want to sue them. You have to understand how, you have to understand those, the details of how this goes down. I've been working on this now for 5 years, and it isn't over yet. So Very exhausting though, even though technically my work, I mean, I did prepare, so I don't want to undermine what I did, but my work in that is one-on-one in the courtroom is less than an hour. But by the time I read and I prepare and I make notes, the other thing I did was I go back and I researched the judges, and I looked up Justice Stranch as well. And she had just recently, just in November 2018, she had entered an opinion talking again about the medical treatment within jail or prison, and I, you know, I found part of what she had written, and I actually read it into my argument. So it was exhausting. It was one day and it was exhausting. So, and then another day I had to drive to Henry County, which is 2.5 hours away. And then I got there, and, you know, that was where they shot me down, and I'll have to appeal that. But that took another like whole day. So it doesn't seem like a lot of legal work, but it's a lot of stress on me when I have to travel and then be prepared and then fight the battles. Okay. So this morning I was at the Tennessee Republican Assembly, and I gave them a little presentation about this law that Tennessee had just passed. I told them that both houses had passed it unanimously, that not one single legislator even blinked their eye that maybe this is unconstitutional. Not one, not even the attorneys that are in General Assembly. Nobody even shuddered. Nobody even said, well, why would that, wonder why people would even want to do that. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. So, so we got to challenge it. So we got to stay on top of it all the time, every minute. And I had also said in a prior video, this is going to be the year for First Amendment, also 14th Amendment, I hope as well. But First Amendment, your challenges about being able to speak out, challenges against political advocacy and not these secret courts and the secret reports, and you know we're going to get past that now. It's time to get past it. It means part of what I'm going to have to do is go to federal court and file about First Amendment violations, and we're just going to have to bring them to the surface. Of course, Michael, all the time, of course. And then, you know, I deal with it. That's what I deal with, Michael. Yep. All right. So I want to talk about a few things member-wise of what I've seen. I try to scan Facebook every day, usually in the morning. Most people who kind of watch me know that when I have a cup of coffee in the morning is when I'm most active, and then at night, because I do work all day, every day, folks. From about 8:30 in the morning to about 6:30 at night, I am either sitting at a desk or in a courtroom, so working every day. So I do try to scan. There are some, I noticed that in Michigan, Layla Fox had put up something about her lawsuit that she's working on in Michigan. So I wish her the best on that. We've had some serious health issues with members and advocates in our advocate family, in our child welfare reform family, because that's what it is. And we've had Randy Davis in North Carolina, who's very ill, Jennifer Wynn in Kansas, Patty Welch in Florida, Sarah Carter in North Carolina, all have some major health issues that have come